Hi, everybody. It's Leslie with the New Mexico Small Business Development Center, and I'm here with Eric Spellman. He always gives us all great advice on marketing, moving your product online, anything you could possibly know about a wide range of subjects. Today, we're going to be talking about should retailers sell their products online, which is very important information. Should you move to online or not? I want to remind everyone that the New Mexico Small Business Development Center strongly encourages New Mexico small businesses to learn about the risks to their cybersecurity. We have a series of webinars right now on YouTube. I'll chat the link over for anyone that wants to watch them. And Eric gave us a great webinar on top 10 mistakes hackers want you to make. So pick that up. If you need more information, I'll be glad to share it with you. If you have questions, please type them into the Q&A. He picks them up throughout the entire webinar, and there's no stupid questions unless it comes from me. With all that being said, I'll turn it over to Eric.
Okay, well, this is a very popular subject. I get asked this quite a bit by small businesses who sell an actual product. And, right now they're just selling to their local town, their local city, and they want to know, well, can I expand beyond that? Can I be the next Amazon? Well, let's not get ahead of ourselves. Step one is to figure out if this is a good fit for you. So if that's what you're wondering, or if you're wondering what are the steps to go through to get there, you're in the right place. And like Leslie said, please ask questions. That's what this is about. I'm ready to answer them. So, should retailers sell their products online? Well, we first need to ask the question, what is selling online? You got to realize that your website, and I've said this before, your website has got to do at least one of two things. It's either got to be generating you leads or generating you sales. If your website's not doing that, I mean, some of y'all probably think, oh, but Eric, my website, isn't it just for advertising? People, if your website is not generating sales or leads weekly, then it was built wrong. I'm telling you, your website is the most powerful online presence you have, because unlike every other, like social media, you have complete control over everything that's being said to these people. On social media, you have to compete with all the other people out there, but not on your website. When you get them to your website, it's all you all the time. So that is your goal. And a good website, a well-built website, will generate leads and sales. So let's first talk about leads. A lead is basically convincing someone to tell you who they are. In other words, they get to your website and you don't know who they are at all, because all they're doing is leaving footprints. You can see the footprints, you can see all the pages they went to, how long they were there, what they clicked on, but you have no clue who they are. So the only way to turn that anonymous looker into a lead is by convincing them to tell you who they are. So we're not going to be talking about leads today. We've already talked about that. What we're going to be talking about is sales. A sale is where you actually offer products and someone goes online and they actually pay you online for that product, and then you ship it to them. So when you hear me talk about generating sales, that's what we're talking about. So we're probably not talking to realtors today. I mean, because heck, you can't put a house in a shopping cart. Well, at least not yet. We are talking about generating sales of products. So we're going to talk about all the pieces that go into that and the questions that you need to have answered before you even consider doing this. Keep in mind, with sales, you ship it, and that's one of the biggest parts. Once a website is built, people are going to be entering their own payment information. So a lot of that's taken care of for you. The sale is basically done, and the only thing you have to do at that point is ship it. So first, you need a shopping cart. Now, that is what we call basically the software that allows people to put things in their shopping cart, take things out, and eventually check out. The shopping cart, that's all it is software. And the reason we call it a shopping cart was because back in the day, People used to use words, you have a button that said buy now. You hardly see that anymore. And that's because most people are scared to death to click that button because it makes them feel committed. It makes them feel like there's no going back. But shopping is different. Shopping is fun. Shopping, we can take things and put it in the shopping cart, and we can take them out without ever buying them. And the shopping cart gives us a place to collect all the things we want to buy and then buy them all at once. Now, the shopping cart software, when choosing it, it must be easy to use and easy for checkout. And it must be secure. How many times have you ever been to a website and you wanted to buy something and it just kept screwing up? I mean, you would put something in your shopping cart and you'd look back into it and there's like 3 of them. Then you look back and there's none of them. Or it has a product that you didn't even choose and it's like so confusing and you're like, ugh, done. I tell people all the time, if you really want to see probably the most high-tech shopping cart there is, go to Amazon's website. Now, I know Amazon may be a dirty word to a lot of you small business owners, but I wanted you to understand that when marketers want to learn kind of what makes a shopping cart easy, keep in mind that a lot of that research has already been done and paid for by the big players like Amazon. I want you to look at the wording they use. I want you to look at the ways they keep you in the shopping cart, because a lot of those methods you can easily use yourself. Now, the shopping cart must also be secure, meaning people must trust it. Because think about it, when they check out, they're going to be giving their credit card information. And if you look like a fly-by-night, they're not going to do it. So the shopping cart must also add trust in these cases so that people will want to continue. Because if, like I said, if it gets too confusing, if it takes too many steps to get in there, or if at any point they don't feel like it's safe, well, you're going to lose a sale. In order to do this, you're going to need a merchant account, which means going to your bank. Now, the bank needs to have the ability to receive these payments from credit cards. Now, there are a lot of different ways to do this. In some cases, your shopping cart might automatically just deposit the money in your checking account. In another shopping cart, you would have the merchant account, which means you have the ability to take Visa, MasterCard, Discover, and all that. And you actually get charged less because you're not having to deal with all of that. You have the merchant account. But most people, when they do this, typically use the merchant account of their shopping cart. You can see this very easily when you go to like eBay or Etsy or one of those, or even some of the other smaller ones that are out there, because they basically just drop money into your account and you don't have to worry about it or even get a merchant account. But I highly recommend that you go ahead and call your bank and get that merchant account, because that way you'll be able to take credit cards without the shopping cart. And that can be very important. When it comes to shopping carts, I'm going to go ahead and skip to what many would have put at the end of a presentation, and I'm going to put it right here. The best platform, hands down, if you want a shopping cart, is Shopify.com. They are the largest one, the most safe, the most secure. Because keep in mind, when it comes to security, you really want a big company, a company that has the resources to hire PhD level security people, stay on top of all their servers, have the newest servers with the newest security patches. I like Shopify.com. Now, I'm not getting paid by them, so don't think this is some sort of infomercial in the middle of your presentation. Just know I've built a lot of websites, and Shopify has given my customers the least amount of grief. It works very, very well. And basically, the way Shopify works is you basically let them be your website. You put your website, and then Shopify automatically handles all the inventory. It handles the discounts you might give. It handles the checking out process, handles a whole bunch of things. And when they also have, Shopify also has a very, very large, they also have a very large third-party app area where third-party programmers have added functionality to Shopify to make it do things that maybe it couldn't do before. Like, for instance, maybe what you sell is something digital, like a program. And before someone can download it, or maybe a song, and before someone can download it, they have to pay. So there's really no shipping in those cases. Really, they're just buying the ability to click a download button. So there are third-party apps out there and third-party programmers who can help you do that. So if you have really weird products that require some really weird stuff to buy, I would recommend Shopify. They also have their own team of online programmers. So if you really need something custom, they can do that as well. There's a lot of very large companies who use Shopify, but the final reason I like them is because they just don't go down. They stay up. And when you have products online, you don't want to be going down, because all that does is freak people out, and we don't want to do that. So yeah, check them out at shopify.com. Which products? I know one time I was talking to a lady in a small town in her store, and there were very, very unique items that I thought would go great online. And I said, you need to start selling these online. And she goes, oh, Mr. Spellman, I can't do that. And I said, why? And she goes, because I have 10,000 different products and I just don't have time to put them online. I said, you don't need to put all 10,000 online. I tell her, in fact, you may not even want to sell all your products online. That's one of the biggest things that keeps people held back, is they think that they have to sell every single thing they sell online. That's just not the case. Some things are going to sell better than others. So I tell them that when they're starting out, you pick 10. You pick your top 10 products and you start with that. And you're saying, well, how do you pick these 10? Well, the way I tell people to do it is you need to look at each product and decide which ones have the highest margin. What I mean by that is, which ones do you make the most money on? You know your costs associated with that product. Which ones do you make the most profit? That would be the first one I would start with, because obviously you're going to make more money. So sort them by that. But then also, you need to sort by easiest to ship. Some of your products may be very difficult to ship. Maybe they're a liquid, or maybe they're just huge, but some are very easy to just throw in a box. They don't break, and they're easy to ship. So what you need to do is look at all the products you offer, pick the top 10 based on these two criteria. Which products do I make the most money on, and which products are the easiest to ship? And once you pick those products, then you're really all set to go. And then that's what I mean. You go and you launch them. You get your website out there. Granted, you're only selling 10 products, but guess what you're doing? Every day or every week, you're adding a few more products, adding a few more products. And before you know it, every single one of your products is in there. So once again, don't feel like you have to do it all. Like I said, a lot of people have held off on actually selling things online simply because they were overwhelmed with the thought of entering all those products online. The next question you need to ask is, how will you ship them? Because to be honest, that's really going to be the grunt work on this. You know, the products will be out there. People will be clicking on their own and putting them in shopping carts, entering their payments, and you'll already know whether it works or not. You'll just get an order from the Shopify saying, hey, ship this out to so-and-so. The question is, how are you going to do that? One of the ways to think about this is, what kind of products do you have, and also who is available in your area? You know, in a lot of the smaller towns, you don't always have the three big ones out there. You don't always have UPS, the Postal Service, and FedEx. You may just have one of them. Or you may be so far out that one of them costs a heck of a lot more than the other. So I tell people you need to compare rates. You need to look at how much it will cost for you to ship things out. Because keep in mind, unlike people walking in your store and buying something, You're going to be shipping something. There is going to be a shipping cost. And if your prices don't reflect that shipping cost, well, you're not going to make as much money. So know your shipping cost. And the way I usually recommend it is kind of decide, maybe pick one product and then find out what it would cost to ship it to, say, California, New York, and then maybe cities in between, just a few random, and then average it out. I'm a bigger fan of fixed shipping versus variable shipping. Okay. You can actually get variable shipping, and what UPS, FedEx, and Postal Service will do is actually compute the shipping in the moment that they order based on where they live. But sometimes that doesn't always work out right. So what I say is, to make it easy many times, find out what the most expensive shipping is, what the cheapest shipping is, and then find somewhere in the middle. Because on some of them, you'll make a little more money than you thought. Some of them, you'll lose a little money, but overall, it'll cover itself. And that's how a lot of people say, if you buy something over 50 bucks, it's free shipping. They've worked that into the thought process. They're not going to lose money on that. Okay. You've got to, like I said, you've got to include the cost of shipping when running your new cost analysis. You're going to look at every product. You're going to need to see, how much does it cost to ship this to California? How much does it cost to ship it to New York? And you've got to, like I said, price it accordingly. There's also fixed and variable costs. Okay. So when talking about shipping, a variable cost might be the price of just sending one product versus the price of sending 10 products. But a fixed cost might be, the cost of having an account, the monthly cost of having an account with the Postal Service or with FedEx or UPS. So take into account all the costs. Also, a fixed cost might be an employee who's actually just shipping things out. A variable cost could be postage with the Postal Service. So remember that you have both fixed costs and variable costs, and you've got to be able to add those in when computing break even so that you can add even more money to it so you can make a profit. Are there any questions so far? Okay. There is another option. If you really don't want to get involved in shipping your product at all, you can use what we call a fulfillment service. Now, this is how a lot of people at Amazon, at Amazon, you can create your own little store and create your own little shopping cart, and you're known as an Amazon store, okay? An Amazon merchant. And you can actually ship or have drop ship a ton of your product to an Amazon warehouse, and they hold on to it. And then you would pay Amazon for fulfillment. So basically, Amazon's doing everything. And all you're doing is just sitting back and watching the money come in. Because what happens is they're going to your Amazon shopping cart, people are, and they're ordering something. The money goes to Amazon. Amazon shipping people then box up and ship your product, because some of your product is at Amazon, in an Amazon warehouse. And then, like I said, they send it out, and all you're having to deal with is questions. Now, keep in mind, a fulfillment service will take another chunk out of your profit. But if you're a one-person shop, it can make it very easy without having to hire someone. You may want to just pay a fulfillment service. Now, there are other fulfillment services out there that aren't Amazon, where, if you're working out of your house, but you have 10,000 of something very large in inventory and you don't have room in your house for it, you can have them all shipped to your fulfillment service warehouse and then just let them handle it. There's so many different ways to make this work. Amazon has probably the best fulfillment service out there. So if you're interested in that part and you want to get rid of that last piece of inventorying, that might be something to consider. You also need to encourage bundling. Now, people, what we really want to do is get people to buy a whole bunch of stuff at once. Okay. When it comes to sales, That's not how we're going to measure success. People ask me all the time, Eric, how do we measure sales? Or how do we measure success in an online site? Is it just simply the amount of sales we're getting, the dollar amounts? No, that's not how the big players measure success. The way they measure success is the average order value. And your good shopping cart will always show you the average order value. What that means is, what is the average amount of money, regardless of how many products they buy? What is the average amount of money that people are spending in one purchase? Okay, not one product, one purchase. So if you have a bunch of products and your AOV, your average order value, the average amount of money someone spends with you is, say, $40, that's all good and fine. But what you may want to do is encourage them to get up to 50. You see, you're going to look at the AOV, and what you want is that number to go up and up and up and up. And the reason you want it to go up is because cramming more in the box does not cost you as much as sending one. It is always cheaper to send multiple items than to send one item. In other words, you make more profit if you sell more items, because like I said, you can put multiple items in one box and shipping does not go up at the same rate as the number of items you put in there. And that's why we like to encourage bundling. Do you remember back in the day when Amazon and Office Depot and Best Buy and a lot of those, they came up with this little advertising slogan, and it basically said, free shipping if your purchase is over $50. In other words, if you'll spend at least $50 with us, the shipping is free. This went gangbusters, believe it or not, because one of the biggest barriers to people buying online versus just walking in a store is they got to pay shipping. Guess what? When you say free shipping, you just take away one of the barriers. Now, some of you go, Eric, how do you do that? How in the world do you offer someone free shipping? Well, let me tell you, but don't tell anybody. Basically, what you need to do is add in a little more cost to each product. In other words, you're going to need to up the price of every product by a little bit to help cover shipping, to where basically the price of the product you're charging almost includes the shipping itself. And that way you can say zero shipping, and yet your shipping is still covered. But the other reason you want to get them to spend at least $50 is because, let's say I get to $45. Don't you think I'm going to go find a $5 item to get free shipping? You bet. I'm going to make more money. You got to realize that when people buy things, when they're excited to buy things and when they're excited to save money, they don't always do the math. Some researchers once did a test where to one group of people, they offered them 25% off, or you could have free shipping. You can pick which one you got when you went online and bought something. You could either have free shipping or 25% off. Believe it or not, 90% of the people chose free shipping. Even if it didn't mathematically make sense, they chose that. The words free shipping are like magical. They're like voodoo, okay? And if there's some way you can incorporate that, number one, people see it as a competitive advantage. If your competitor is charging shipping, but you're not, guess what? Guess who's going to get the deal? Like I said, I'm not asking for you to lose money. I'm simply saying, if you work the shipping cost into the price of the item, then you can quote offer free shipping, and people will jump all over that. The other question, how responsive will you be? When you sell something online, you can't just ignore your website anymore. When you sell something online, you've got to be available. Because when people buy online, maybe something goes wrong, or maybe they need to cancel an order, or maybe they need to return something. Are you going to be there? I tell people all the time, I don't care what kind of website you have. It could be a leads website. It could be a sales website. But if anyone asks you a question via email or message or something like that, you had better respond within 24 hours, even on weekends. Remember, I've told people everyone on the internet has ADD. Everyone has ADD. They want instant gratification. And think about it. What if you ordered something and made a mistake and you sent an email out asking them to fix it? If you didn't hear back in 24 hours, wouldn't you get nervous? Yes. Might even make you want to cancel the order. So before you commit to putting things online, you also need to commit to responsiveness. You need to commit to answering people's questions. Now, a lot of ways people handle this these days, and it's very popular, is your online chat. In other words, there's a little icon, a little button, if you will, usually in the bottom right-hand corner of their website, and they can click chat now with one of our representatives. And when they click, yeah, that way you're not taking that valuable phone resource. They're actually just chatting over the internet. But a good employee can handle maybe 2 or 3 chats at the same time. You can't handle 2 or 3 phone calls at the same time. So I'm a big fan of online chat. It's definitely a way of making people feel that you are responsive. Answering the phone is still important. And yeah, I do believe you need to post your phone number. But what we don't want is people just calling us up and ordering over the phone too much. Now, I still believe your phone number needs to be on every page, but I don't know. It's different. Some people fight me on this one. They say, Eric, I don't care if it's a high tech, low tech response. I want that order. But realize when you're on the phone with one customer, it is taking your time that could be used for some other purpose. Am I saying hide the phone number? No, not at all. I mean, how many times have you ever been? How many times have you ever been on a website and you just wanted to call them up? So I say make your phone number available. Email is another way of being responsive. And like I said earlier, you need to be giving people like a 24-hour response time, if not quicker. So yeah, you're going to need to check your email more and more and more. I also recommend that you get what we call an alias email. Now, an alias email might be shopping help at whatever.com. And what happens is this is not a real email address. I mean, yes, if they email it, you'll receive it, but it's an alias, meaning that any email sent to shopping help at whatever.com will automatically be sent to the following people. And you can have multiple people receive it. So in other words, it forwards it to their email, their personal email, or their office email. That way, if you get a lot of these kind of emails, you can have as many people under it answering. Now, there's a whole system involved in how do you know if they answered it? I didn't answer it. You don't want to answer them twice. There's a whole system to that, but realize that email can be a great way. The other reason I love email and even love the chat is because it documents it. You know, it documents the conversation. And whenever we're talking about returning products, I'm all about documentation because you don't want to get scammed. Another really good statistic to look at is abandoned carts. Now you need to understand what an abandoned cart is. An abandoned cart is basically someone went to your website. They actually started putting things into the cart, but they never check out. They abandoned the cart with all the things still in it. And the question is, why? Why did they fill up a cart full of stuff and just leave? Well, there can be times when they just got interrupted. They got busy, you know. The boss was walking around and saw them doing online shopping when they should be working, so they just closed their screen. Or maybe a baby starts crying or something. So there will be sometimes when it's just random and it just happens. But if you see this happening a lot, if you see a lot of abandoned carts, then that could mean there's a problem with your checkout, that you're scaring them somehow, or that it takes too long. And so watch that. Measure the abandoned carts you're getting, and that will help you understand kind of what's going on. Sometimes the cart is confusing. putting things in and out. I remember one time I was on a website and I accidentally added 3 of an item when I really only wanted 1. So I went back into the cart and I told it to change the quantity to 1. Well, no, the quantity went to 51. And I went, no, I want 1. And I tried it again and it went to 31. And I just could not get it down to 1. And so I abandoned my cart. Like I said, before you choose any kind of shopping cart software, you need to test it. You need to go to a website that uses it and see what the process is like. And your shopping cart vendor, hopefully Shopify.com, your shopping cart vendor will give you some sample sites to actually play with and see what the process is to see if it is confusing. You also need to get some of your friends to try out your shopping cart and write down what they like and don't like, even about the wording you use on it. Okay. You also need to create a return policy. Returning something in a store is easy. You just walk in with your receipt, return something. But what about when they buy it online? How's all that going to work? Well, first you got to define the policy. Every business is going to have a policy. Every business. You have to decide whether it's going to be like a 30-day return, a 14-day return. And by the way, they don't get to return it from the moment they ordered it. That's not how you measure the number of days. They return it from the day they receive it. So if you're giving them if you have a 14-day return policy, then it's going to be 14 days from the time your customer received it, not the time that they ordered it. So you got to define that policy and make sure the rules are very clear, or you're going to be looking at some very angry customers. Another question, are you going to refund their shipping? Because keep in mind, if they don't live near you, in order to return it, they're going to have to pay to ship it back to you. So one of the things I would recommend is that you refund any kind of shipping costs that they have, or you could even send them a box at your own cost for returns. And it might even already have a sticker on it. All they have to do is pack the box and then take it to UPS, and UPS will charge you for the shipping. There's so many different ways to do it. And I recommend you look into that. I know I recently helped a company do this with UPS. So I know they have the ability for you to buy shipping labels or print them, but you don't get charged for the shipping until they actually are used. And then you just throw the shipping label into, where the package is. And that way, if they want to ship something back, they can, and they don't have to pay for it, and they'll get it back to you. Sometimes the returns can be built into the shopping cart itself. And I know Shopify does have that ability. Where after they buy something and they've already received it, they can always go back to your shopping cart, log in, and click, I want to return this. And then that signals you to maybe send them a label, or believe it or not, it might even print a label on the customer screen once you approve it. And they get a box and they return it at your cost. So there's a lot of different ways, but you gotta think, how are people going to return an item if there's a problem? You also have to deal with your reviews. Now, remember, we've talked about reviews before. And when I say reviews, I mean Google reviews. Those are the only ones that matter, not Yelp. Remember, we talked about this. Yelp kind of got in big trouble because you could actually pay Yelp to get rid of your bad reviews. And people discovered Yelp was doing that, taking money to remove bad reviews. People, it's okay to have bad reviews as long as you respond to them. You can't remove them. And that's one of the first things. I remember, well, I'll just tell you this. The only way Google will ever remove a review is if it contains hate language or racist language or something like that, or violence or something like that. I remember one time, I had just started my company and everything was going good. And I got my first Google review. I was building websites I was so excited. I looked at it and it was 1 star. That's right. My first review ever was 1 star. And basically the review itself said, um, this guy's not any good at what he does. I would definitely use someone else. I was almost in tears because I knew the customers that I had. Remember, when I just started out, I only had like 5 customers and none of them were unhappy. So I looked closer into this review and one of the things you can do in a Google review is you can click the reviewer and it will show you all the other products that person has reviewed. And what I discovered was this person named Jason had only really done a few reviews and all of them were about website companies and all of them were about website companies in Amarillo. And there were actually 5 reviews. 4 of them were negative, and they all said the same thing. I wouldn't use this guy. I would definitely use someone else. I mean, the exact same wording. But there was 1 review that gave this other web developer 5 stars, basically making him out to be the best thing since sliced bread. Well, if you're with me so far, you probably realize what happened. One of my competitors had written 4 fake reviews against his competitors and then a review positive towards himself, which totally goes against Google. So I contacted Google and I said, hey, this is a fake review. Can you remove it? And they said, no, it doesn't have hate language. So in those particular cases, what you can do is you can respond. You can respond to the review. And so that's what I did on this fake review. And I was a little snarky, I'll admit. I mean, I basically said this. This is a fake review by one of my competitors. I hope his ethics with his customers is higher than his ethics in reviews. I know I was sarcastic. I was snarky. But the point is, anyone reading that review will also see that. So while you can't get rid of bad reviews, you can respond to them. And people expect companies to not all have 5-star reviews. Would you really trust a company where they all had every review is 5-star? No, because that's just not possible. So you're going to get a bad review, and sometimes it is deserved. Sometimes you did deserve that. One of your employees really screwed up. But in those cases, what you do is you respond to the review. And when you respond, your response is shown underneath the review if anyone ever sees that bad review. So your response, and I'm not being sarcastic this time, your response might actually be something like, I'm so sorry you had that experience with us. That's never our goal. Please contact me directly. My name is blah, blah, blah. And let's see what we can do to fix this. Now, keep in mind that reviewer gave you maybe 1 star. But when people read his 1-star review and see your response, what are they going to think? That company is responsive. They don't expect everyone to, be perfect. It's impossible. But they really like your response. Now, if you do have a bad set of reviews, I mean, what Google does is they look at all your reviews and they give you an average. So they say this company has maybe a 4.2, which is great. 4.2 average on reviews, 4.2 stars. Or this company has a 2.3, which is bad. If you want to up your score, if your competitor is beating the pants off of you when it comes to the number of stars you're getting on average, first of all, do not create a fake review. Google is onto that. And if they catch on to you doing that, you're done. Okay. So don't create fake reviews for yourself just to up your average. What I do recommend, though, is you start encouraging good reviews. Now, you can't tell people what to say. You can't. But what you can do is hit them up at the very moment they're going to be happiest. Did you know that the happiest the people who are buying things from you will ever be is at the checkout counter, is when they're checking out. So when people come into your maybe brick and mortar store and they buy something, one of the best things you can do, especially if they're all happy and giddy and had a great time, is get their email address, for your newsletter, but also send them an email with a link to your Google review area saying, hey, it would really help me out if you would review your experience with us today. Don't tell them how to review it. But when you give them a link that takes them straight there, they don't have to work to find it. Because keep in mind, the majority of people who are going to review you are angry. They don't like you. They don't like you so much. They're going to work however hard it is to leave you a bad review. People who love you don't. They don't leave reviews at all. They came in, bought their product, they're all excited about it, they go home. So the only way to beat down all the bad reviews you're going to get, because you will, is by encouraging good reviews. And so, like, if someone were in my store and they came up to me and bought a product, I might say something like, hey, here's a little, and I might give them a business card, and on the other side is a link or whatever to my review area. Or I might shoot them an email and say, hey, we're always trying to better ourselves. Click here and please leave a review for us. It really helps us. Once again, you can't tell them what to say. But when you give happy people the ability to tell others how happy they are, they will. And that will definitely bring your score up if it is down. And like I said, fake reviews, the only thing you can really do is respond to them and call them out when you know it's a fake review. You also need to do some recon, some reconnaissance on who? Your competitors. If your competitors have a shopping cart and you're thinking about having a shopping cart, then go look at theirs. In fact, you might even order something. Don't use your name, or maybe get a family member to do it for you and order one little product from them just to see what the process is. I'm telling you, information is power. So yeah, go buy a cheap product from one of your competitors just to see what the entire checking out process is. Because if it's all convoluted and questionable and all that, well, that gives you some bragging points. So first of all, who are your competitors? Some of you out there might be pretty confident and say, well, Amazon is my competitor. Ooh, they're going to be tough to beat. What I was more talking about is maybe some of the local players in your area who might have a shopping cart. Define who they are and try to stay within your own product line too. If you make birdhouses, don't go after, don't do any recon on someone who sells books. They're very different things. And like I said, go through their process and check out and actually order one of their little products. Yeah, throw them a bone. But like I said, it is reconnaissance. Also, you need to check out their marketing. Under a free email account, sign up for their email newsletter. You need to see what coupons they're giving out. You need to see what ways they are promoting their service. You can learn a lot. Some people, they will either go hire a web analyst to help come up with all this, or they'll simply do recon and go to their competitor sites and the national site and then just copy what they do. And that's okay. It's a process. We're not copying words, we're copying a process. Now, if you're going to be selling something online, you've got a market for that as well. Some of the key marketing terms I would recommend here is you need to use urgency. How many times have you ever heard, buy within the next 10 minutes and get an extra set for free? What are they trying to do? They're trying to let you know you need to order now. I'm going to mention this later, but watch some infomercials. A lot of people, they're watching infomercials and they go, oh, yeah, I want that pop. I want that copper pan. Look at how those eggs just slide out of that. Boy, I need one of those. Ones I have are off. But the problem is, unless you motivate them or incentivize them a little bit, they're probably never going to order it. They'll want it, but not enough to get off their butt and actually do it. So one of the ways you can actually take these people who already like your product and maybe want to order it, just aren't motivated to do it, is urgency by offering an incentive. By the way, those infomercials that claim, be the first 100 people or order in the next 10 minutes, you realize they don't know for sure because their little infomercial was not live. They just bought time slots for it. So that's kind of just a little marketing ploy. I guarantee you wait an hour. They tell you order in the next 10 minutes. You wait an hour and call, you'll get the same deal you would have had otherwise. Another marketing technique to use is scarcity. Home Shopping Network uses this quite a bit. They're offering some jewelry or something, or QVC or whatever. They're offering some jewelry. And what do they have in the bottom right-hand corner or the bottom left? It's like how many are left. Sometimes they have a little clock for how much is longer on this particular sale. So that's kind of the urgency piece too. But in Home Shopping Network and QVC, they actually have, quote, how many they have in inventory. And you'll see it slowly ticking down. And you're realizing, oh my gosh, if I don't order this now, they're going to be sold out. That's what scarcity is. If you're able to use both of those, you can really sell a lot. Like I said, you need to watch infomercials. Watch their checkout process. The way most infomercials work, you probably noticed that there's a couple of things they have in common. Number one, the only price you'll ever pay is $19.99 or 3 easy payments of $19.99. What is it about $19.99, $19.99? Well, believe it or not, they've done studies and they've shown that $20 seems to be the line in people's head on where they decide whether something is expensive or not. If something is worth thinking about a little longer before you buy it or just getting. So $19.99 in most people's heads that's easy. That's a no-brainer. I don't have to think about, do I have enough money? I'll just get it. So what they do, believe it or not, and I know this sounds weird, they start with $19.99 even before they have a product. Then they figure out how many of these products can I sell for $19.99 and still make a profit. So let's say that the pan, let's say you're getting a copper pan. So, and they're charging $19.99. What they do is they really sell the features of this $19.99 pan, one pan. And they'll say things like, look at what you can do. Try to buy this somewhere else and it could cost you up to $100. But here it's only $19.99. And you're going, they get you to the point where you're thinking, wow, that's a good deal. But do you know how they actually close the deal? How they actually push you over? Ronco figured this out back in the day. At the very end, they go, call within the next 10 minutes and we'll double your order for free. In other words, you're going to get 2 copper pans for $19.99. And what you may not have realized is they started with the price of $19.99 and figured out how many pans can I put in this $19.99 and still make a profit. Oh, we can do 2 pans. They were always going to sell you 2 pans for $19.99. It was how they marketed it. They had to make you feel that it was a good deal for 1 pan and $19.99. And that's how they get you to buy 2. Offer coupons, but not too many. Because if you're always offering coupons, I like to think of this as the Bed Bath & Beyond strategy. I know a lot of people, including myself, who will not go to Bed Bath & Beyond unless we have one of those little 25% off coupons. We just won't do it. And that's because Bed Bath & Beyond has gotten us used to those coupons. They're too easy to get. So offer coupons, but don't offer them all the time. Or basically people won't buy until they do get a coupon because they know they're going to get one at some point. I tell people all the time, the happiest someone will ever be is when they check out. So that's the perfect time to give them a coupon. Like when they check out, you can say, hey, thanks for buying a product. We just wanted to give you a 25% off your next order. And see what that does is it gets them to come back. That's what you want. You want repeat customers. You can also video blog as an expert. So let's say you sell copper pans. What you do is you start creating videos on cooking using those pans. And that way you can kind of mention them all the time. Because keep in mind, and I've told you this before, people would rather buy from an expert than a salesman. Teach them how to make food in your beautiful little copper pan. People would rather buy from an expert than a salesman. And if you come off as a chef, guess what? In the cooking world, a chef is an expert. And I would rather hear the opinion of a chef on which pan to buy than the opinion of just a pot salesman. Okay, questions on any of this? Oh, I see a question. Let's see what we got. Drew wrote, I will be selling both products and facilitator-led education programs. Does Shopify have any other online registration functions or educate? Yes. Yes, you can sell that. Now, there are other sites, actually, if you're going to be selling training. Like maybe you put together a video series on how to do something and you want to sell that. There are other sites out there, and you might, and it escapes me. There's a few of them that are really good. But you might just do a search on, how to sell training online. Okay, and basically what it is, and I've actually done this, is you upload your videos. You create a whole set of courses. You upload your videos, and then you put a price on it, and then to gain access to those videos, they pay the price and you get a piece. So yeah, I would probably go that route instead of like Shopify for selling access to training. Let's see. If not, is there a learning management system, an LMS that has e-commerce built in? Yeah, like I said, I wish I could think of the name, Drew, of that software because I've looked into it and I actually did it and it worked out quite well. I just can't think of it off the top of my head. So yeah, you can definitely sell training online very easily. Other questions? Anything at all? Okay, Leslie, I might turn this back over to you then.
Okay. And Drew, if we find the answer, I will email you on what the answer to that question you were looking for. But I want to tell you real quickly, if you guys think of any other questions before you do that, let me tell you about the upcoming trainings. So we have 2 bilingual sessions coming up. One is transitioning to the new normal. We have another bilingual session, accessing financial resources. We have a session on before you sign, examine your contract. We also have, are you tax ready? PPP, EIDL, and employee retention tax credit, tax implications. So if you've had any of those resources in your business, this will give you the next level on what to do as far as your taxes. And then I'm excited because, and we have we have so many people already signed up for this one. Eric's coming back next week on getting found online with Google. The rules have changed. And I will tell you that is going to be a hot topic. And a lot of people have already signed up. So get your registration in for the no cost confidential counseling on that. And you know what? I agree with you on Bed Bath and Beyond. I get so many coupons and I think they turn the Wi-Fi in the store because I can't get to my coupons and I get frustrated. So you have to kind of find that happy medium, which is too much or not enough. And I think it's a lot of playing around and getting that search to your website for the stuff that you are selling, because you might want to dabble in selling online, but you have to be found also, right? Which is a big factor in it.
Yeah,
Because I know your online platforms, you're selling online platforms, they are not free. they do charge a fee, so you've got to make sure it's worthwhile for you and your business.
Definitely. And I did a quick search just now. And I'm gonna have to do a tiny bit deeper search. I probably searched on the wrong thing, but I will find that and get that information to Leslie, and she can get that out to you on how you can actually sell courses online.
Absolutely, I will do it. If there's not any other questions for today, we will see you next time. Remind you to sign up for the no-cost confidential counseling at nmsbdc.org. You guys have a great rest of your day. See you later.